How's it going, YouTube? It's your boy Optima, back with a brand new video, and today I wanted to finally bring you guys that top 5 underrated decks video that I told you I would after bringing you all that top 5 overrated decks video. I wanted to give this some time as I wanted to make sure that I felt confident in the decks that I put in this video, so I hope you guys didn't mind the wait. It also took a little bit longer because of the fact that I needed to do a little bit of a mental reset with Legends of Runeterra personally, on top of also my son's mother had a little bit of a COVID exposure, so we also wanted to make sure she tested negative while I was on extra parent duty. So thank you all as always for the support. I really appreciate it. It's been really good as of late, and I hope we can keep that up. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe if you are new, as we'll continue to be pumping out content on this channel. And lastly, leave a comment, as I love hearing from you guys on what you thought of the video, and if you agree or disagree. Doesn't matter to me, I just love hearing from you guys. And yeah, let's, I guess, get into today's video. So in today's video, I wanted to obviously bring you guys the top 5 underrated decks within the Legends of Runeterra Magic Misadventures meta right now, as we swiftly approach a seasonal happening this weekend. This meta's went through a lot, but at the end of the day, one thing that's been consistent is how open it is. Even with Ari Kinnan kind of wrecking every deck that it goes through, even its bad matchups at times, every other deck kind of feels to either be kind of low, high tier, like low tier like A or tier S, and or like tier 2, like low tier 1 or tier 2. There we go, that's what I meant to say. So it's been really fun and really fair, and I'm really excited to watch this seasonal tournament. I won't be competing myself, which I think is actually absolutely for the best, as I needed to just kind of take a step back from Legends of Runeterra, but I really cannot wait to watch the entire showcase, and I hope to see a very fun show, and I think we'll definitely get that with how good this meta is currently at the moment. I hope you guys who are competing all have fun, and I hope you guys do well. If you are someone who's competing and you happen to watch this video, let me know what lineup you're bringing in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys, and nevertheless, good luck. I know you guys will crush it. Let's get into the video though. We're going to start off with 2 honorable mentions, as there's 2 decks I definitely still wanted to discuss that just didn't make it into the top 5, and then we can get into the top 5. And once again, leave a like if you enjoy. I'd really appreciate it. Just one like. First deck is going to be none other than that first honorable mention in Darkness, and Darkness is going to be a deck that I've always been high on. I just think few champions synergize in the way that Senna and Vigard do, and specifically in this deck with Shadow Isles and Bandle City being the 2 region combination, you just have so many amazing tools and really good followers. Otterpus, Conchologist, Dark Bulb Acolyte, Twisted Catalyzer, Stilted Robemaker, Extali Sentinel, the Rekindler, Decenata, and then really solid spells. Like, I think every card that you use in this deck feels pretty solid, and the spells also allow you to control, especially with the Darkness generation, while also allowing you to keep your champs alive with cards like Miscall, obviously Rekindler and the Follower, and Stress Defense. I just love everything about Darkness, and it feels like players are finally shifting back to using Darkness as a strong tournament deck within their lineups. We saw a little bit of a shift off it at first due to the new aggro, the new control tools that were given to us with the nerf to Vengeance and the buff to Kindred. Viego Ionia started to pop up more. We've been seeing a lot of Freljord Shadow Isles control decks, but nevertheless, there's nothing like Darkness, and especially chunking a Nexus for like 8 because of a Darkness with a leveled Vigor. Nothing like it. I love this deck, and I think it's finally fully coming back as a strong tournament option. Our second honorable mention is going to be none other than Pirate Aggro, and Pirate Aggro is a deck that I don't think is generally that underrated, but for whatever reason it's just always overlooked as a strong aggro option within those triple aggro lineups. We are seeing one of the best aggro players right now in the community in Finny really showcase the prowess of this deck as he continues to bring triple aggro lineups and win tournament after tournament. He actually was the winner of the recent Master Runeterra tournament. After all the qualifiers finished, the big tournament went down and Finny was the winner, and he was sporting a lineup of Ari Kinnan, Pirate Aggro, aggro and spider aggro. So I think pirate aggro definitely needs to be looked at as a better deck than it generally is seen. Generally you see a lot of it on the ladder at times, especially early in the meta, but then out of nowhere it even loses its play rate on ladder, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Great aggro deck, always has been, and I don't think it's going anywhere, even with that slight nerf that we saw to Gangplank with our most recent patch. It's just insignificant, generally speaking, for this deck. So I am huge on pirate aggro as a solid aggro option within those triple aggro lineups. Let's move on to the top 5. So first on the top 5 list is going to be none other than Lurk, and Lurk is a deck that was generally, once again, also seen as generally a deck meant for ladder and not so much meant for tournament, due to not feeling like you have a lot of control over how well this deck performs. But that mentality seems to be shifting as a lot of players are bringing it and also doing well with Lurk within their lineups. The big things for Lurk as to why I feel players don't see it as a consistent deck, and more so one that high rolls, is that Pike spell. Do you Lurk into Pike and get the depth from below spell? That is just such a phenomenal way of taking over a game, and obviously if you don't get that, then that changes a little bit of what you're able to accomplish. So players don't like that variance of having to Lurk Pike for that really strong spell. Then you also want to be attacking on odds. It has been proven by data that attacking on odds with Lurk makes it significantly better than evens, but that's for the general player. And we all know the general player doesn't pilot most decks that correctly, so you just never know how much validity to put into some of those stats at times. And either way, we're seeing Lurk do strong things, so we know that attacking on evens is far from a death sentence. The last thing you see as a kind of high roll play is getting Jawfish down with a decent sized board. Jawfish just allows you to wipe everything and can even enable Pike's level up, so Jawfish is a really good card, but people can see it as a little it needs that perfect scenario to really give you that really good strengths. But I see this card all the time just literally flip a matchup on its head if you could get to turn 8. And yeah, I think Lurk is absolutely needs to be removed from the box of it being like this inconsistent high rolly deck, because it's just not that anymore, and players are showcasing that. Number 4 is going to be none other than Bandletree, and Bandletree is going to be a deck that I know that most people are going to be like, hey bro, this isn't an underrated deck, but I would actually beg to differ. You aren't seeing a lot of Bandletree in tournament for one reason or another, and I have to say it doesn't make a ton of sense to me due to the continued interactivity of a landmark win con like Bandletree that is also so solid at getting up to those high totals early into the game. You'll have Bandletree at 6, once it's turn 5, that's super solid. You're so close to winning the game now, and so few decks can do anything about that. Even Ionia is just going to put it back into your hand, so you just have to slam it again. And I think the deck is just so good at chump blocking or removing units that it needs to be validated as a really strong option within the meta right now. Overall, I do think the deck, if piloted correctly, can find itself struggling, but that's pretty much any deck. And I think at the end of the day, when you have such a strong interactive win con, you're probably in a good place. And we have seen players win with Bandletree or do really well in big tournaments with Bandletree within their lineups throughout this entire Magic Misadventures meta. I think this deck is definitely not being brought to enough tournaments, so it's going to slide in at that number 4 spot on the top 5. Number 3 is going to be another deck that uses a landmark, but this one's generally just seen as a meme rather than a frustrating uninteractive strategy like Bandletree, and that's going to be none other than Targon's Peak. Targon's Peak is seen as a meme due to the fact that Targon's Peak enables the highest of high rolls probably within the entire game. There's just nothing like Targon's Peak going down, and then that following turn, it makes your A Soul 0 mana or makes your Fill the Rush 0 mana. There's just nothing quite like that. Nevertheless though, because of the fact that it is relying on a bit of RNG to hit the more impactful cards within your hand, players generally see this deck as a meme. Even after Extasio won the Runeterra Life last $1,000 weekend tournament using Bandletree within his lineup, and even using a discount version of it because him playing on a Smurf account that he didn't have all the cards on, which is absolutely insane to me and really just shows how strong Targon's Peak can be be within the right hands. I think we really need to stop regarding this deck as a meme and rather a RNG deck that can easily high roll you. It's so easy for Targon's Peak to hit a very impactful card on turn 6 due to the fact that that's what the deck has plenty of. There's so many 8-drops, so many really solid spells. It's easy to hit something that allows you to either stall the game well and then hope to hit that ASOL or something a little bit more impactful, or to just hit something super impactful and flip an entire game on its head. I think it's a solid deck. Obviously, we have needed to go through some growing pains with it to learn what cards are worth actually adding into this list, because you do need some early game. You can't rely entirely on on Targon's Peak to put you in a advantageous position, and I think we're finally getting that with cards like Spacey Sketcher, Faces of the Old One, Kindly Tavern Keeper for healing, and then the typical spells with Avalanche, Divergent Pass to draw your landmark, Cataclysm of Eons, so that you could get more mana. It just all makes sense. I think the deck's in a pretty solid place, and I think it should be in more lineups. What lineup exactly, I wouldn't know because I haven't really played it, but I do think it needs to be validated as a solid tournament deck and just an overall decent option within the Legends of Runeterra meta right now. Number 2 is going to be none other than Ziggs Talia, and this might come as a huge surprise to a lot of you, but I really think this deck is being slept on. At the end of the day, landmark decks are super fun, so there definitely is a little bit of bias here, so take that as you may, but there's bias all over this list. There just may be a little bit more with this one because I do like landmark decks. However, I would say that Xerath Zillion is actually starting to fall off a little as a strong tournament deck. Broken Ball, being like the originator of really popularizing the deck, seems to be one of the few players who can actually really pilot it to strong win rates. A lot of other players are unfortunately just tanking that deck's win rate on ladder, and we're also not seeing a ton of it in the same way we were earlier in the tournament meta within the current Runeterra meta. Things are shifting, and that deck's just not really sticking around in the way that you would want. Nevertheless, though, Ziggs and Talia are two champs that are really good at turning into really aggro champs within the mid game, and this is what this deck really allows with cards like Herald of the Magnus, giving them +2/+2 and Overwhelm, and a deck that easily destroys enough landmarks to have a leveled Herald of the Magnus. There's good aggro cards in Invented Chemist, even Rockhopper into Endless Devout to force trades. There's some really good play patterns within this deck. The two champions synergize extremely well, and the landmark synergy is just super there to then top end with the arsenal to finish off a game if you don't do it with your champions before then. I really like this deck. We did see Grave Trail get second place in the Master Runeterra tournament with this deck in his lineup. It's sometimes hard to find these hidden underrated gems though when it comes to the tournament meta, because 90% of players are going to prioritize comfortability decks or just well proven decks in the tournament meta, or really strong ladder decks in their tournament lineups over these more experimental builds that we just haven't quite seen enough of, which is unfortunate because I do think a lot of decks get overshadowed because of that as far as how strong they could be in the tournament meta. One that I would consistently say is Tomkin Soraka should be in tournament lineups a lot more, but because we don't get a lot of insight on its matchup tables from ladder, a lot of players are opposed to bringing it into tournaments, and I think that's the case with a deck like this that just is starting to get its foot through the door as far as getting into the meta, and for that reason a lot of players are still going to be hesitant to feel like there's not enough data and not enough and they don't have enough time to really iron out this deck, tech it the way they want, and really learn how exactly they need to navigate and pilot it. But I think this deck is really strong. It does have a pretty solid win rate in Masters, and then second place in a huge tournament in Master Runeterra from Grave Trail was all I needed to see to put this deck at number 2 on my top 5 underrated decks. Last, but definitely not least, the number 1 deck within the Magic Misadventures meta as an underrated option, in my opinion, is going to be Iceborne Spiders. And that's because this deck has just went through so much, but right now it is showing some really strong results within that tournament meta, as tons of players are doing extremely well with it. The thing about Iceborne Spiders was that it initially popularized by Cephalopod, was showing really strong prowess on ladder, and was just really hard for players to deal with the swarm of big or beefy little spiders being all over the board. And really just when you got cards like Vilephish, you could just flood the board with them and take that Nexus down, and then just finish the game with Trundle or even like Ledros. Nevertheless though, this deck started to then kind of fall off because players started to see it as not that it was easy to chump block the spiders, and then the control aspect of the deck was also easy to kind of deal with. It was just worse than the other Freljord Shadow Isles control decks at controlling the game. So for those reasons, it started to fall out of favor quite significantly within players. Within Runeterra. However, it's showing really good results once again, and that's just on the back of players learning how to pilot it more and just teching the spells a little bit better. One spell you're not seeing here on this list that I do think should be heavily considered is a One of Ruination, as I think it works super well within this deck. So I would consider maybe taking one of the Glimpse or something out of the deck to get a Ruination in there, because it's really good for Ruination into Ledros. That's just always been a really good way of kind of just taking the game over with the control deck with Ruination into Ledros. And yeah, just so many solid options, able to flood the board really well. You could get a level to least with big beefy spiders, which is also super scary. And yeah, I even have a friend who is a typical diamond player who made it to Masters on the back of this deck as well. We're even seeing a little bit of experimentation, as Mofraju, a very popular streamer for the Spanish / Brazilian community within Legends of Runeterra, she was able to win with this version using Sejuani and Avaros and Trapper of the spiders. Not sure how much better this one is. I do really like a level Trundle, but maybe the Ice Pillar doesn't actually synergize that well with spiders, since you wouldn't want to get rid of a spider to drop down an Ice Pillar, which is why people are choosing this option. I would love to hear more insight from someone who's actually played this deck to know why they're choosing Sejuani, but it's still cool to see a little bit of experimentation, and that experimentation is going well for people doing it. So Iceborne Spiders is going to be the #1 underrated deck within the current Magic Misadventures meta, as we quickly or swiftly find ourselves with our next seasonal this upcoming weekend. So once again, best of luck to anyone competing in the seasonal. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Definitely let me know if you agree or disagree with my thoughts on these decks. And yeah, let me know what else kind of countdowns or what else you want to see as far as new videos moving forward. I really would love to hear from you guys, because I'm here to entertain. So whatever's going to entertain you guys, let me know. This is really fun to do, and I feel pretty confident that these are all solid decks within the current meta. So if you want to give them a chance, why not? Even if you're not in the seasonal tournament, just mess around with them and let me know what you think. Love to hear that you guys found this to be useful, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. For now, this is Optima signing out. Peace out.